Hello, Governor Brown. I understand that as governor of the state of California, your schedule is very limited, so I thought I would create this, something that you could watch at your own convenience, to offer some feedback regarding some of the bills that were being proposed in Sacramento. I went down there to the Capitol on the 13th of August to sit in and observe some of the bills that were being proposed, specifically those related to Second Amendment civil rights here in the state of California. I'm not going to go through each single one that was being proposed in detail. I just want to hit a few of them for you. The first one is SB 374. Now, basically what this bill proposes is that long guns in the state of California be reconfigured in such a way that in order to feed ammunition into the firearm, the action of the rifle has to be disassembled. I can't help but think that the author of this bill is not familiar with how rifles operate, because by proposing that you take apart the action of a rifle in order to feed ammunition into the magazine actually creates a more potentially dangerous situation for the user. For example, if there is an issue with the ammunition, say a misfeed or a double feed or something called a stovepipe, and then at which point the operator has to take apart the action of the rifle to resolve the issue, it can create a potentially dangerous situation for the person using that rifle. My further concerns with SB 374 is that it's going to further damage the gun industry here in the state of California, because now rifles that are sold to Californians have to be manufactured in a completely different way. Also, this bill diminishes the power of self-defense for the individual, because now you have to take apart the action of the rifle in order to deliver ammunition into the magazine. SB 396 has to do with magazine capacity. Basically, this bill discusses the fact that someone in Sacramento has decided what is the appropriate amount of ammunition that a Californian can have in their magazine. Further, this bill amounts to confiscation of property. Were this bill to become law, overnight, untold thousands of Californians, good, law-abiding citizens, will now be criminals because of a piece of property that they own. Further, this delves into confiscation of property. I foresee a lot of legal issues between the state and individual Californians who just say, hey, I don't want my personal property confiscated by the state. SB 683 has to do with the Firearm Safety Certificate. Basically what this bill is describing is how an individual Californian goes about getting the safety certificate so they can purchase a firearm. For example, let's say a Californian is interested in purchasing a handgun. If this bill, 683, becomes law, not only will that Californian have to go through a safety class and be trained on safety issues and the components of a firearm that they are interested in, say a handgun, but they will also then have to be trained on those matters related to rifles and shotguns as well. If I can make an analogy here, when I go to the DMV and I test so that I can get my driver's license for the state of California, I am not also required to know how to operate a motorcycle and how to operate a bus. I'm just interested in knowing how to operate the vehicle that I will be driving, not all of the other ones as well. And that's what this bill is proposing for the individual Californian. Not only do they have to be trained on the firearm that they're interested in purchasing, but now they've got to be trained on all the other firearms as well, regardless of whether they're interested in purchasing them or ever using them or not. I think it makes things more complicated, not less. Regarding these issues, I also want to bring in an article here that I saw on the Huffington Post, and I'm just going to go ahead and quote right here from the article for you. It says, lawyers representing Governor Brown argued to the Supreme Court of the United States that releasing 10,000 more inmates would mean letting violent criminals out on the streets and overwhelm the abilities of law enforcement and social services to monitor them. Now, basically what this article is describing is that the Supreme Court of the United States has required the state of California to release 10,000 criminals onto the streets by the year's end. And your lawyers were arguing to the Supreme Court, look, we just don't have, our law enforcement does not have the manpower or resources to monitor all of these violent criminals that are now going to be out on the streets. And to that point, I observed earlier in the year something called the Trust Act that was being relayed before the Assemblymen, which basically says in a similar fashion, look, we don't want to make it a priority for our law enforcement here in California to track down all of the illegal immigrants that are here in the state of California. My question here is that the arguments here to the Supreme Court were that our law enforcement just does not have the resources and manpower to track 10,000 violent criminals that are about to be released on the streets. And in the Trust Act, it says that we just don't want to make it a priority for our law enforcement to be tasked on tracking illegal immigrants. But in another bill, it was proposed that we do make it a priority for law enforcement to monitor and track Californians who purchase a certain amount of ammunition in the state. So I question that priority for our law enforcement, and I also see a dangerous trend here with 10,000 inmates being released by the year's end. Were all of these bills to become law and 10,000 inmates to be released, I foresee a great number of victims being created, because now it's hard for Californians to simply own firearms and be able to defend themselves and the ones that they care about. I would ask you, sir, to not only refuse all of these bills, but to re-examine California state laws regarding the Second Amendment civil rights of individuals. Allow Californians to enjoy the same kind of civil liberties that other Americans do across this nation. Thank you for your time.